morning arrived, and with it a rejuvenated excitement for what the day held. Terrador was pleased with the cotton Cynder had brought back, and whisked the two prodigies away before Voltaire or Cyril had the chance.
Alright, so what's special about this particular cotton grown by earth dragons is that you don't need dye to color it.
Once more seated in the garden, Terrador plucked a small bit of the material from the fluffy pile, and, after a moment, exhaled over it. Spyro and Cynder watched with fascination as the cotton absorbed his magics, gradually turning a deep green.
Now then.
Setting his piece aside, and suppressing a smirk at the amazement of his pupils, Terrador took the remaining cotton and separated it evenly.
Both of you give it a try.
It's just as simple as breathing?
Essentially. It possesses special properties to hold on to dragon magic, channel an element, and release it.
Cautiously, Spyro inhaled. He let his inner fire ignite throughout his body, into the tips of his wings to the end of his tail. He closed his eyes and released his now far hotter breath. He opened his eyes when he heard Cynder gasp.
Spyro, you did it!
Oh, wow.
The purple dragon watched his previously white cotton become a deep burning orange. It was warm against his paws and prickled lightly as if were a budding flame. Cynder sat down on her haunches and lifted her bunch of materials to her face. Opposed to Spyro, her innards grew cold and light. Air filled her lungs and lifted her spirits and wings as if caught by a non-existent wind. Her cotton flushed a pale teal. It chilled her paws and trembled lightly. Cynder laughed excitedly, and Spyro joined her. The world was full of so much wonder, so much more than they had ever gotten to experience. Terrador's face softened. While 3 years had changed their appearances, their minds were still so new. Despite what they had gone through, despite the trauma and the loss, little things were able to incite true joy. Terrador knew this was something to be endlessly thankful for the young heroes. He cleared his throat and presented a tapestry. It was old. The top was red, not too different from Spyro's. It gave way to green, then blue, and finished with yellow.
This was the binding tapestry created by the other Guardians and myself.
Terrador gently laid the old cloth on the ground for Spyro and Cynder to get a better look. Spyro's eyes fixated on the fiery thread that led the rest.
A binding tapestry is as special as the cotton it's made from. As the name implies, it keeps our ties to each other strong. Dragons who thread a binding tapestry together are said to always be connected, however far they travel, even in death.
Spyro ran a gentle claw over the intricate strands, each colour intertwined so deliberately. There was little room between each line of thread.
Spyro, why don't you go first? That way Cynder can catch up with what she missed yesterday with the others.
The purple dragon looked down at his vibrant cotton, a bit intimidated.
Sure. You'll tell me how to start though, right?
Of course. The first step will be to spin the cotton into thread.
Cynder took her leave as the lesson began, off to deliver what Cyril had requested she retrieve from her trip to Warfang. The ebony dragoness found the Ice Guardian, pacing the halls.
Ah, Cynder. However does Terrador expect me to be able to get anything done when he keeps stealing away my apprentices?
I don't know,
Cynder replied, following him. Once they reached the room that would host the main festivities, Cyril exhaled.
Oh, never mind that. Have you brought the supplies?
Cynder, whose mind had been on other things the majority of the walk, was relieved he changed the subject.
Yes, here.
She turned her bag over, dumping the contents onto the ground. Several heavy sheets of gold and silver fabrics, and an assortment of other odds and ends.
Excellent work, young dragoness.
I'm glad it's what you wanted.
Quite.
Cyril set the objects to the side.
We'll decorate soon, but for now I will teach you how to dance. Spyro picked this up in time, and I'm sure you will do just fine as well.
If you say so.
It was mid-afternoon by the time Voltaire trotted in. Cynder's paws were thoroughly warm, and she gladly left Cyril's admittedly pretty enjoyable lesson for something hopefully more mellow. "Oh, how thrilling this all is!" the electric dragon snickered, as he led her off to another section of the temple. "I will show you how our ancestors of yore dressed for this most special of occasions, how their apparel changed over the centuries, and hopefully we will find something for you to adorn. Isn't it all terribly compelling, fascinating, alluring? Oh, I haven't even told you anything yet. I'm just thinking of it all." Cynder blinked, only catching bits of what he had said, due to the speed of his speech.
Yes?
In any case, his wide grin remained. Voltaire continued to prattle on, as he dug around in several old trunks, sitting idly nearby. "Oh, yes, Spyro just looks marvellous on this one, you see. It was rather big on him, but there's only so much you can do about that." The garb he had handed her was deep red. It was simple, nothing too fancy or remarkable about the piece. It had a gold trim, and shimmery fire was emblazoned along the ends. Cynder gently felt the fabric between her paws.
Was this...
Voltaire's smile saddened, but held. "Ah, yes. That was Ignatius's party wear." Cynder nodded quietly, carefully handing the robe back. Lightly, Voltaire extended a wing to hover over Cynder's back. "Fret not, Cynder. Ignitus remains. He lives within us all. And besides, I think one day Spyro will grow into this quite nicely." Cynder appreciated his optimism. She was shown the rest of the Guardian's festival robes, as well as dragons of the past she had never heard of. It was interesting to see how the attire had changed over generations, beginning very one-tone and boring, growing in colour and decorations, and returning to more minimal designs. It held her attention. There were very few options that would comfortably fit her, but she settled on a silver-grey garment for herself. A little big, but better than nothing. Evening was drawing closer and closer. Spyro's paws, though unbeknownst to him, were aching similarly to Cynder's. He and Terrador had been pleasantly conversing throughout the day, as Spyro worked on his half of the tapestry. History lessons had eventually given way to sharing memories.
Then, can you believe it? Sparks couldn't fly for the rest of the day. I had to carry him around.
Terrador's throaty laugh echoed around the garden's friable walls.
Oh, surely not.
No, I'm serious.
The purple dragon grinned. It had been a rocky start, but now he easily wove each thread together, without much trouble. Terrador, who had been tidying up the garden for most of their time, now approached Spyro.
My, this is wonderful, young dragon. Far better than my attempts when I was your age.
Really? Well, I had a good teacher.
Terrador chuckled lightly, smiling.
Let's get inside.
Spyro and Cynder were told to rest up and sleep in the following morning. They did so pretty happily. When the two did rise for the morning, they found snow falling lightly outside. Cynder left with Terrador to finish her end of the tapestry, leaving Spyro with the other guardians.
Well, old chap,
Cyril gave Spyro a light pat on the back, motioning to follow.
you'll be helping us decorate, and while we do, we will do our best to teach you the fire dragon's role in the days of old.
Yes, it is quite the interesting series of events that led to the modern-day ceremonial hunt. Wars between dragon clans, extinction of the beast they were hunting. Oh, how utterly fascinating it all is, young dragon.
Now, Voltaire, don't spoil it all.
Cyril rolled his eyes. The two went back and forth, and Spyro had trouble keeping up with it all.
Actually, speaking of the hunt, I should probably go do that before the snow picks up.
Oh, that's a good point. Cyril and I will start cleaning then. Good luck, Spyro. Spyro nodded in thanks and took his leave. He could hear the Guardians begin to bicker once more as he left. He had a feeling they weren't going to get too much done. It felt good to fly and leave the stuffiness of the temple. Spyro drew in a long, heavy breath as he gently glided down along the river and wove through the mushroom forest. Despite the excitement and the anticipation that came with preparing, Spyro was happy to just let the river wash away all his thoughts for the time being. Spyro shivered as he touched down on the shore, placing the basket he brought in the snow.
So, I guess I'll just...
Mumbling to himself uncertainly, Spyro sat down and waited. He watched the water flow, watched the snowflakes disappear as they touched the stream. It was all very peaceful, but Spyro wasn't seeing any...
Oh, okay.
A dark shape was quickly approaching from upstream, and Spyro tentatively braced. His timing had been right, but trying to grab a fish and hold onto it with his paws was unsuccessful. He was there for a few minutes before another opportunity came around, and in that time he had recalled seeing one of the cheetahs from Hunter's village fishing with spears. The fish drew closer, and Spyro plunged his head beneath the surface, biting blindly. He missed. Spyro spent the majority of the day slowly learning how best to accomplish this task. On a few occasions, he'd definitely just got unlucky with a catch, but he was grateful nonetheless. Mid-afternoon rolled around, and he figured he'd finally culminated enough fish to make a decent meal. Thankfully, Voltaire flew by around that time to check on his progress. Very impressed with the haul, he helped carry the heavy basket back. To Spyro's great relief, Voltaire also offered to take over preparing the feast. Thoroughly spent, Spyro was grateful to catch Cynder in the halls when he returned. Unfortunately, they had little time to talk, as Cyril rounded them up to finally clean up the festivities' main room. With all the reorganizing and rebuilding, much of the temple's floors were covered in dirt, dust, and various bits of rubble. Voltaire had stored the fish away and soon joined to help, and Terrador arrived to be of equal assistance. The two were stuck with most of the groundwork, while Cyril, Spyro, and Cynder attached gold and silver fabrics along the ceiling trims. They also carefully hung the binding tapestries from many past generations. The newest was suspended cleanly above the large fireplace. Snow was falling heavily now. It was getting late, and once the dining table had been set, and everyone had adorned into their party wear, the 5 dragons were ready to finally reap the reward of their efforts. With everyone comfortably seated around the long table, Voltaire readied the fish over the fire.
Typically, we would have a large variety of meats as well as all kinds of berries that are in season. But
Cyril caught Terrador's subtle disapproving glare from the corner of his eye and paused.
this is just divine. Thank you, Spyro. And you as well, Voltaire.
Yes, thanks you two.
It already smells so good.
I hope I caught enough. What a struggle.
Spyro laughed, shaking his head. It really is perfect, Spyro. Now, everyone, before we eat, let us give our thanks. Allow me to start. Voltaire stood tall, spreading his wings. Spyro, Cynder, thank you for all you have done. Not just for us, of course. You two really are the most heroic, gallant, gusty, intrepid, stalwart, valiant, and good-hearted dragons I have ever had the pleasure of knowing. He finished kindly and bowed his head.
Well, what else am I supposed to say when you've just done all that?
Cyril scoffed, straightening as Voltaire sat down. He turned his attention to the pair of young champions, both of whom were still recovering from the flattery of the previous speech.
Spyro, Cynder, you have my thanks as well. Without your determination and perseverance, we would not be celebrating today. All those that call this planet home shall forever be in your debt. Ah!
He tuttered as Spyro opened his mouth.
No, I will not stand for any denying. You are heroes, both of you.
The Ice Dragon smiled knowingly as he gave the floor to Terrador.
Spyro, Cynder, what more can be said than we owe you our lives? I am so proud of you, young dragons. And I know Ignitus would be too.
Spyro beamed. In that moment, everything felt right with the world. Lei was safe. The planet knew true peace once more. And for the first time in a very long while, he did too. Cynder's wings were drawn tightly to her sides, and she shifted slightly in her seat. All this attention was nice, but somewhat overwhelming. She smiled too, just ready to eat.
To Spyro and Cynder.
Terrador announced, raising his goblet. To
Spyro
Spyro
and
and Cynder. Cyril and Voltaire echoed this, and the dinner was served.
And to Ignitus!
To ignite
Ignitus.
us! Long after everyone had finished eating, the small group had gotten lost in multiple conversations. Voltaire, having gone through an intense debate with Cyril on the impact ice dragons had on the Glacian Set Festival, had worn himself out and was snoring heavily on the remains of his meal, leaving Terrador and Cyril to their conversation. Spyro and Cynder, not having had much time alone with the hustle and bustle of the last couple of days, had moved to sit by the fireplace and chat. Not about anything terribly important, but it was fun. Fun to just exist together. So lost in each other, they hadn't heard the approaching steps.
Are you two going to put the ballroom to use?
Cyril questioned almost smugly, pulling the pair from their discussion. Spyro glanced over at Cynder, matching her grin.
Yes, I think so.
Very well. It appears the others are all too tired to continue with the festivities. Enjoy the remainder of the Glacian Festival, young dragons.
A soft silence befell them once Cyril returned to his fellows at the table.
Hey, Cynder?
Yes, Spyro?
The purple dragon met his closest friend's curious gaze.
Will you dance with me?
Cynder laughed softly and gently leaned against him.
I was worried you weren't going to ask. I'd love to.
Side by side, Spyro and Cynder approached the dance floor. It had been a long past few days to get to this moment, but it was worth it. Cynder nestled her head carefully against Spyro's neck and closed her eyes. With just as much care, Spyro rested his chin atop her head, his own eyes falling shut. Together they swayed. Neither of them had the most grace or much practice, but they didn't care. The freezing winds outside couldn't touch them now. No harm could befall them when they had each other. There, on the darkest night of the year, all stars obscured by the heavy clouds, the world was quiet. It was just them.
You're all I need, Spyro.
Sighing contentedly, Spyro pulled her a little closer with his wings. The binding tapestry was a nice physical sign of their bond, but he knew this feeling in his chest was strong enough to last a lifetime of its own.
This is home. Here with you.